Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. My name is Aaron. I'm delighted to be joined here by Matthew Hurley from the GAA Statsman podcast to run through all the weekend's in-depth hurling action, as well as discussing the two Tailteann Cup games and also the qualifier draw, which we'll get Matthew's thoughts on that one as well. Obviously, with Cork getting a nice draw in many people's eyes in Louth, but certainly we'll discuss that one a little bit later. Just a reminder, we're brought to you by Declan Kirby GAA Star, the best children's GAA book out there on the market at the minute. You can check it out in the description down below. Also on Amazon, Easons, all good bookshops. Perfect gift for any nieces or nephews in the coming weeks and months and all the rest. I suppose, Matthew, how is life with yourself? I suppose I'd imagine buzzing, obviously, with the fact that Cork have somehow managed to find themselves out of the Munster Championship. Quite incredible stuff.
Yeah, I suppose. Thanks for having me on, Aaron, again. It's been a while. But Cork, they dug themselves out of a pretty deep hole. The Waterford game last week was even more impressive, in my opinion. Like, lots of people thought Waterford were All Ireland contenders 2 weeks ago. And look what happened. Waterford going out to the championship so early, no one would have seen that coming. I suppose some people did see the Tipperary result coming yesterday. Cork were just much better. Tipperary were a bit of a shambles yesterday. Kind of a bar Tipp support at the moment in hurling, but there was disappointment, I suppose, with Liverpool losing the title. We were talking about that off air. We were flicking over back because the hurling kind of petered out a small bit in both games. In the Clare game as well, like Clare ended up hammering Waterford with a second string team, which was even more. Cork made it through in the end. Limerick and Clare in the Munster final now, and I'm sure disappointment on your end with Dublin on Saturday night. Pretty good position 2 weeks ago, same as Waterford, and ended up going out of the championship. It's amazing what can happen in the space of a few weeks.
Yeah, it's an unusual one, all right. I mean, Dublin finishing with more points in their championship than Cork, funnily enough, but yet they somehow didn't manage to make it out of their province. I suppose it does show the importance of score difference. We did have just a few brief connection issues there, so hopefully we can sort that out in time. But anyway, you were saying Tipperary 124, Cork 330. So we'll start obviously with this result. I mean, an incredible result really from Cork. I mean, to score 330 against Tipperary is quite incredible, really. Like, when you think of the rivalry between these two counties down the years, you think of Tipperary and their rich history in hurling, the second most successful county in the history of the All Ireland Senior Hurling Championship. And here are Cork with 330, like, absolutely blitzing them. And realistically speaking, this game was well and truly over at half time.
It was definitely, and even with the stats I did on yesterday's game, 324 scored from play for Cork, 111 for Tipperary. Like, no mistake about it for Tipperary. I mean, Cork were absolutely incredible, and Conor Lehan, brilliant performance from him, 7 points from play. But if I was a Tipperary fan walking out of Semple Stadium, I might be like, where is this team going? I know there wasn't much yesterday, according to some Cork fans. Apparently it was 5-1, and that's Tipperary's home game. Like, so there has to be friction in the Tipperary camp. I know there's injuries with James Conlon out injured, John McGrath, some brilliant players. But at the same time, you'd expect the Tipperary team in Semple Stadium to show a bit of fight. They did first 10 minutes, to be fair to them, with a penalty, Jake Morris getting that early goal. But after that, like, it was kamikaze stuff from Tipperary. Cork were just so far ahead of Tipperary nearly all game from that moment on. It was a bit like Cork and Kerry in the football last year. As soon as Cork started to lose rhythm in that game, Kerry took over. It was the same here. Tipperary, they got a bit of rhythm in the first 2 minutes. And then when Cork took over, there was only going to be one winner. And there was a moment towards the end of the game where Cork were just tied with them. Tim O'Mahony's goal. It was a brilliant goal from Cork's point of view, but you have to question, where was the defence for Tipperary? And even Alan Flynn getting sent off for, striking out. I mean, there's some friction in that Tipperary camp. And I don't know where they go from here, in all honesty. And we were talking about it last year on your podcast, that maybe they didn't bring the young players in often enough last year. They did this year, and they ended up being in so much pressure because of the older lads like John McGrath, Seamus Conlon getting injured. They paid a heavy price after that, and they got a tanking off Cork. And I think this was the biggest defeat Tipperary had against their rivals since before the Second World War. I mean, to put it into context, that's a absolutely terrible result for Tipperary yesterday. There's a question, where do they go from here? They could now play Kerry in a relegation playoff in Munster. Like, you have to expect Tipperary to win that, but if I was a Tipp fan going the next few weeks and you'd have to play that game, I'd be nervous, maybe even a shock in the cards there. But for Cork, brilliant turnaround in the last few weeks. You have to give it to them. The players stood up when counted, and they're into the All Ireland series now. Fair play to the lads there, but Ferrari, what a terrible performance, a terrible year for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said there, like, it was Cork's biggest win against Tipperary since 1942, actually, as a matter of fact. So quite an incredible statistic, really, to put up such a huge scoreline. I mean, what, in your opinion, do you think changed for Cork? It's kind of funny. Like, I remember I had you on the podcast not too long ago, and we were chatting through Cork, and I think it was after the league final, and you mentioned about Patrick Horgan being dropped, and I suppose a few people left comments and weren't too happy. A few people agreed with you, but you've seen, obviously, in the last win as well against Waterford, Horgan obviously comes off at half time, and obviously, he does seem to be playing a bit of a different role as well. So, it does seem like a lot has changed for Cork. Like, defensively, I think you've massively improved. I know you still conceded 124, which is quite a high score, but like, to rack up 330, I mean, incredible, really.
And I suppose that's down to Kieran Joyce at centre back, and I think he has to be assured for an All-Star so far in the championship season. He's changed Cork's campaign. We moved him to centre back when people were saying, "Oh, Mark Coleman's more experienced, why he moved him to wing back?" It ended up being a masterstroke for Kieran Kingston, because what Kieran Joyce does in the back line, he clears up danger, he clears it up the field, and he lets Mark Coleman do his stuff skill-wise. And Mark Coleman instead scored, I think, 2 or 3 points yesterday. Like, that just shows what a brilliant tactical decision that was from Kieran Kingston. And I said Patrick Horgan should be dropped. Well, at the same time, they bring him off now at half-time. He's playing less of a role now with the team, and they're giving more of a role to the likes of Alan Connolly, who scored a goal again now yesterday. He scored, I think, 4 goals in this championship season. He's been absolutely outstanding in front of goal. Seamus Hartley's been a brilliant point scorer last games, and the experience we needed. Conor Lehan, my God, what a player he is. He played well in the club championship. There was a lot of pressure on him coming into this All-Ireland championship and the Munster championship, indeed. He scores 7 points from play, 6 from play in the first half. What a performance from him. And even, Shane Kingston didn't do as much yesterday, but he still scored 4 points from play. Like, when he's not played particularly well and he scores that margin of scoring, you have to put your hat off to him, and he's a very good hurler. And yeah, Kieran Kingston, you have to give credit to him. He made the changes when need be, and they have worked. And I suppose I was hearing some Cork fans' point of view, and this will go back to football again. Like, the Cork footballers put up a very good showing against Kerry, and apparently that hit well with the Cork hurlers. They did say we have to fight for every ball here in the next game against Waterford, and that probably changed our season. The players are now fighting for the county, and now we're in a very good position. We're in a much better position than we were at the end of the Clare game. Indeed, like, the Clare game was a terrible performance. The Limerick game, we got a slaughtering. And then against Waterford and Tipp, our season has completely changed on its head. And that has to be credit to the players, credit to the management, and maybe credit to the footballers as well, who jizzed up these hurling players. And yeah, very good performance from them, but tougher test lie ahead. I expect Cork to win the next game now, whether it be Antrim or Kerry. No disrespect to those counties. But then the quarter-final against Kilkenny or Galway, most likely, that'll be the acid test for Cork, because Waterford maybe had a bit of an off-season in the championship, and Tipperary were an absolute shambles. So that would be the acid test, I think, in the quarter-final stage for this Cork team.
Absolutely, yeah. And you mentioned there as well about the Kerry footballers fighting for every ball in that game against Kerry. And although they were beaten by 12 points, like, they showed a tremendous amount of work rate, determination, and didn't give up throughout the majority of the game. And that kind of leads me on to what I was going to ask you next about the Cork hurlers, because it seems the mentality in some ways has just really shifted. And I think that's the sign of a great team, in my opinion, because, when the going gets tough, when it gets difficult, you need leaders to step up, you need characters to step up. And you've seen Cork with the likes of Horgan stepping up, Conor Lehan, who's been excellent, obviously Shane Kingston as well, Shamey Harnedy, like, all these lads stepping up, really showing the sign of a great team. And sometimes it's moments like this that can flip team seasons. Like, you've seen Waterford, when the going's got tough for them, they haven't been able to recover. And you see what a lot of teams, usually when the going does get tough, they can't quite find a way to turn it around. So the fact that they have sort of overcome this terrible start, and let's not forget the All Ireland final appearance last year, the league final as well. Like, there was just so much going wrong for Cork, but the fact that they have turned the corner, and obviously a long way to go, yeah, it must give you a lot of confidence that maybe if things do get tough against the Galway or Kilkenny, you might have it within yourselves to turn it around.
And the thing is, with going into the Galway Kilkenny game, I genuinely believe the Munster Championship will take brilliant pleasure out of Cork, to be honest with you, because the Leinster Championship isn't the quality up to the Munster Championship, in my opinion. So I think Cork will be well set for the challenge of either Kilkenny or Galway, whoever it is. Personally, I'd rather Kilkenny play Cork, but we'll have to see there. But even if we get over that game, we'll probably play Limerick in the semi-finals. We'll have to see about that game, but over the last 2 games, actually, Limerick haven't performed particularly well. Like, we'll see them now the Munster final in the next few weeks against Clare, see if they learn those lessons from the games against Tipperary and against Clare, the last game in Cusack Park. So, look, it's going to be a tough All-Ireland campaign for Cork. We're now going through the tough side. We went through kind of the easy side last year. So, this will be a challenge for these Cork players, but looking at the last 2 games, they are up for this challenge. And, yeah, maybe the footballers gave them the positivity they needed out of the last few weeks. And a player I forgot to mention as well, Robbie O'Flynn in that forwards, he scored a lot of points and he's working hard for the team as well. Dar Fitzgibbon scored a goal yesterday. Like, a lot of them players are working hard for the team. Damien Cahalano criticised him a lot in the past, saying he's more of a footballer. You have to give credit to him. He's been absolutely outstanding. Sean O'Donoghue has arguably been Cork's player of the year so far. Patrick Collins as well. Like, you look at his puck out stats yesterday, was absolutely superb. He got over 70% every time, and I'm not sure did he actually save the penalty for Noel McGrath. If he did, that was a crucial moment in the game. Let's not forget that. If that penalty goes in, Cork are 7 points down, and Tipperary would have the confidence then to go on and win the game. But instead, Alan Connolly goes down the other end and scores a goal after the missed penalty, and Cork are then only a point down. Dar Fitzgibbon scores a goal after that, and the game's completely turned. Like, these small margins, Cork seem to be getting it right now, and that's a pleasing aspect for this Cork team indeed. And it has to be to Ciara Kingston, the players, the management. But again, some tough tests lie ahead. Like, Kilkenny and Galway will not lie down to this Cork challenge. I'm sure of that. They won't lie down as weakly as Tipperary did yesterday. There is better challenges coming for this Cork team. We'll have to see over the next few weeks. But the signs are there that this potentially could be a good season for these Cork players.
Absolutely, yeah. And GATV says here, Cork can win lame if they are on form, and certainly a lot of Cork fans will be feeling that they might be able to do something special this year. In regards to Tipperary, obviously very disappointing from them. 4 defeats now. I think they've only won 3 of their last 10 championship games or something like that since they last won the All Ireland in 2019. So it's hard to know really like where it's all gone wrong. Yes, it has been lads getting older, players retiring. They didn't really bring through many of the young lads last year, and I think that's sort of really come back to haunt them because they've had to rush a lot of the younger lads through. And again, it's some players just aren't performing, and tactically, it's hard to really know what way Tipperary are trying to play under Colin Bonner as well. So, I mean, just very disappointing from a Tip point of view.
Yeah, awful performance for them. And I was seeing a stat on Twitter recently. I think it was Conor McKenna on Twitter. Correct me if I'm wrong, no, but Tipperary have lost their last 6 championship games. The 2 games last year against Limerick and against Waterford, of course, and they've lost their 4 games. Like, if you said that about Tipperary in 2019, you'd be like, what the hell? Tipperary are a proud hurling county. They're the 3rd most successful All-Ireland team in history. And for them to put up this performance, I know Colin Bonner's come in and there's a bit of transition in Tipperary, but to put up that performance yesterday in the second half, like, the Tip fans there, I must have felt sorry for them at times because it was just dire. Even the 2 subs coming on, I think Alan Flynn and Patrick Bonner-Maher, you were thinking they're going to add a bit of spice to this Tipperary team. They didn't at the slightest. Like, it was so easy for Cork at times. Like, I mentioned the 3rd goal as well, and even the first goal as well. The way Cork cut through Tipperary so easily yesterday, even when Tipperary were on top for the first goal. Like, it's just schoolboy stuff. And even Ronan Barr, I thought, played well enough in fairness to at full back. But the others around him, Tipperary players need to stand up and be accounted for. I know John McGrath's injured. I know Seamus Cannon is injured. I know Colin Bonner's come in. But for this Tipperary team to fall flat on their face like that against their big rivals, against Cork, this is a Munster derby. And keep Tipperary just lay flat on their face and let Cork walk all over them. It was just so easy. It was like watching, Dublin in the Leinster Championship. We're carrying the Munster Championship right now in football. Like, it was that bad for Tipperary. I mean, there's the question, where do they go from here? Because, like, You know, they performed poorly in the league. They lost to Dublin in Simple Stadium, let's not forget as well. That was a pretty bad performance. They've lost 4 games. They've lost their 6 games in Championship. Like, I can only count, they only performed well against Limerick and against Waterford, and then they followed up with performances against Clare and Cork with awful performances. And that's the worst aspect for this Tipperary team. I'd be really worried if I was a Tipperary fan going down the home straight for the next few years. Like, you have to question, when is the next All Ireland going to come for this Tipperary team? Because I guarantee you, if this keeps going for Tipperary, I don't think they'll win an All Ireland the next 5 years. I know they're the third more successful team, but I don't see where this team is going, Aaron. It was pretty shocking from them yesterday.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, all right, with Tipperary. And as you said there as well, like, I mean, the second half performance was miserable, really. And they've had a lot of that in the last couple of seasons. Like, you think back to that Munster final against Limerick, where they really struggled to get into that second half. I think they only scored 3 or 4 points for like the opening sort of 20 minutes of that second half. And obviously they've had a lot of very sort of drab performances. Like, they seem to concede a lot in patches. Like, you think even against Waterford as well in that second half, where they conceded the 2 goals back to back. So they seem to have these moments in them, and like, they have had underage success in the last couple of seasons. I remember they won back to back under 20 All Irelands. There clearly is talent there. There clearly is good hurlers as well. You see it obviously at club level. So I don't think they're a million miles away, but I don't really know what it is with them. Like, just a lot of players aren't performing. Obviously, Shamie Callanan's been injured for the championship as well. But even at that, like, he has been getting older anyways, and he, is most likely to retire in the next couple of seasons. I mean, in terms of Colin Bonner, like, I've seen on Twitter a lot of Tipperary fans saying maybe it's time for him to go. And it's sort of funny. They tried to get Liam Cahill in, and that hasn't, he hasn't worked out with Waterford either. So I don't even know if they'd want him anymore. I know Willie Maher maybe is an option, but what do you think? I mean, with Colin Bonner, does he stay on next year?
Look, he's only a year in. Like, I think it's still a bit premature. I know it was a pretty drab showing for Tipperary this year, but it's only 1 year. Like, he is clearly, like, when you look at the Waterford performance, I know you mentioned they could see 2 goals back to back, but at least against Waterford and Limerick, they showed a bit of heart in the Munster Championship. My frustration with Tipperary is they followed up with pretty bad performances, like the one against Clare, where they could see the 3 first half goals. Like, for a Tipperary team, that's inexcusable. And even the second half performance yesterday as well, that would worry me as a Tipperary fan. But look, Colin Bonner, he's in his first year. Maybe he needs to be cut some slack. Like, he got the best out of a bad enough bunch this year. Like, you look at the injury list they had, the motivation wasn't clearly there from last year either. There's something wrong in that camp. I don't know what it is about this Tipperary team, but I'd personally give Colin Bonner maybe, 1 more year. If he doesn't get out of Munster now next year, I think he has to hit the road, and Tipperary should let him go. But I think it's a bit of premature talk, considering he's only 1 year in. Tipperary fans need to calm down in the managerial appointment a small bit. I know the performance has been drab. They've been disgraceful at times. But at the same time, a manager needs to be given time after a year. Maybe after 2 years, I would have said he needs to leave. But after 1 year, look, it's a bit harsh on him. In all honesty, like, maybe they need to look at the players as well. The players need to look at themselves in the mirror, because some of them performances, yes, the Colin Bonner can't control them. Like, I mean, some of them players need to be accounted for as well. Tipperary fans need to realise that. And look, it's going to be years for Tipperary to get back up to the top. I'd say leave Colin Bonner for 1 more year. If he doesn't do well now next year, I think he needs to hit the road. But I think it's a bit premature talk, in all honesty, Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard one to know, really. I mean, it's been obviously very difficult in the Munster Championship. You're looking at some very good teams in there, like Limerick and Clare have obviously been superb. Waterford, where they probably played Waterford at the wrong time, realistically speaking, because that was Waterford's only win, and maybe Waterford were coming in as a team to be feared. Maybe if they got them further on in the Championship, they might have been able to beat them. But at the same time, though, with Colin Bonner, like, I do have a lot of family from Tipperary. I know what the standards are like in hurling down there, and I know the standards are very high. And it has been strange to see a lot of supporters not attending games as well. So I think, it has to be a two-way street. I think the supporters need to get behind the manager. The manager needs to show something in return as well. But clearly at the minute it isn't working. And it'll be interesting certainly to see what happens in the next couple of weeks in regards to his position as Tipperary manager. We were speaking of Clare there, and a huge result for them against Waterford, 331 to 222. They knock Waterford out of the Championship. a third straight defeat for Waterford in the Munster Championship. And I think I've seen something like they've won 1 out of their last 19 games, Waterford, in the round robin series, which is just absolutely insane, absolutely crazy altogether from a Waterford perspective. Might even be one win in their last 20 in total over the last 4 years. Just absolutely insane result altogether there.
Yeah, it is. I was seeing another stat on Twitter. I think they've won 2 Munster Championship games over the last few years. Tipperary at the start and Cork in 2020. Let's not forget the round robin series last year. They didn't win a game either. Like, I don't know what it is with Waterford and the Munster Championships in the past few years. They kind of flatter to deceive. But a lot of people, including myself, said Waterford would be up there with Limerick, and they kind of fell flat on their face. It looked good for Liam Cahill over the last few years, but look, it was it kind of petered out for Waterford, in all honesty. Like, against Cork, at least it was only 6 points they lost by. But against the Clare team that were already in the Munster final without Tony Kelly, I know Clare are superb. Even without Tony Kelly, they have some very good players, as shown this year. But at the same time, we would have expected a bit of a reaction from that Waterford team, and they just didn't show it, in all honesty. Like, it was a poor showing from the Dessie Hutchinson. Performed well in the championship, but other than that, like, Stephen Bennett seemed to only score from frees. Austin Gleeson kind of lost the head of this championship. I don't know what it was about him. He seemed to be, turning a corner, being such a brilliant player over the last few years. Even after the league final, we were talking about him being one of the best players in the country, and he ends up getting sent off against Cork. And look, all their player seasons seem to have petered out. And Liam Cahill saying in the post-match interview as well, something's just not right in the camp. He can't put his finger on it, and it was just strange for Waterford, in all honesty. Like, you look at Tipperary, for example, you would have expected it from them going into the championship. The preparation wasn't ideal for them, but the preparation was all there for Waterford, and they just didn't deliver. I don't know what it is about Waterford and Munster Championships. It's a strange one. They've only won 1 round robin game. I don't know what it is. They can't do it over a longer period of time. Maybe they get better as the season goes on, which is why probably the pass system kind of suited them more. Look, it's a very, very poor result for Waterford there. You would have expected at least a win. They would have gone out anyway. Cork beat Tipperary quite comprehensively. But this latest, like, you would have expected Waterford to perform much, much better than they did. And they didn't. Against kind of depleted Clare team without Tony Kelly, without their main players, Mark Rogers injured as well. So, look, it was a poor showing from Waterford, and you would have expected fight from them. That was the least you would have expected from them, and they just didn't show that. And look, they're out of the championship, and I don't think much people would complain, to be honest with you, Aaron. Waterford were pretty drab in the championship this season.
Yeah, very odd one, all right, from a Waterford perspective. I think, a lot of people had them as the second best team in the country. Probably yourself, myself, we all sort of felt that, really. And, it's just been very, very odd to watch them. You would wonder, have they burnt themselves out a little bit from all the, obviously, you mentioned the likes of Dessie Hutchinson and whatnot, obviously winning an All Ireland Club championship with Ballygunner, going all the way in the league as well. Maybe did they buy into the hype a little bit? Like, you had Derek McGrath on the Sunday game talking about, whoever beats Waterford is going to win the All-Ireland. And you just do wonder, did the pressure get to them a little bit? But from a Clare perspective, you mentioned there, obviously, no Tony Kelly. And again, to rack up a scoreline of 331. Some huge scorelines this weekend, by the way, it must be said. Some huge scorelines indeed. And, Shane O'Donnell almost produced, and he's gone back to almost his 2013 form when Clare won the All-Ireland. He scored 5 points. Peter Duggan's come back into the side, and this was, in my opinion, his best performance since coming back in with 8 points. Cathal Malone, Ryan Taylor, Davy Fitzgerald with 2-3. They're getting scores from so many, areas of the field. And I've seen a statistic as well where Clare they made the most chances out of everyone in the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship last year, up until they were knocked out. It's the same again this year. So, Clare, they really are the real deal here at the minute.
They are, and the funny thing is, a lot of people actually writ them off. I was saying they'd finished third in this competition. You said they'd finished third in your prediction as well. And people kind of laughed at these GA predictions, saying Clare are clearly going to finish bottom here, but they proved everyone wrong. And what a performance for them. And even looking at the table last night, correct me if I'm wrong, no, I think they actually finished top of the league, just ahead of Limerick on points difference. Like, if that happened, that was an incredible achievement from Clare. Team that most people would say would finish bottom of Munster, to go to the top the very top. Like, I mean, what a performance. And when you look at the players out, when you look at Aidan McCarthy was out for this championship, Mark Rogers ended up getting injured before the championship even began. That is superb showing from Clare. And even Peter Duggan, Davy Fitzgerald has performed very well, not to be mistaken with the bad man himself. But the midfield piece performed pretty well for Clare, scored 2-9 in the championship so far. You mentioned Shane O'Donnell. Like, I've Shane O'Donnell leave that Cork performance in the replay 2013. This year's proven he hasn't at the slightest. He scored 11 points from play in this championship season so far. What a performance from him. Ian Galvin, Cathal Malone isn't scoring as much, but he's still chipping in and supporting the team. David McInerney, Robin Mounsey is another good young player they have. Shane Meehan is another player they haven't used often, but is another young player that they can spring off the bench. So Clare have a very good core there. Tony Kelly, as you say, was missing yesterday. Dave Reedy scored a goal yesterday. He's very impressive. And you have to give credit to Brian Lohan. We were talking about him. I think last year there was rumours he'd leave, and I was saying, look, he's building an empire here, Clare. It'll take time. Clare fans need to be patient about this. It kind of reminded me about, I think, Mauricio Pochettino with Tottenham in soccer. He got Pochettino improved Tottenham as the years went by. The same with Lohan. I actually would be surprised if Clare win the All Ireland here. I know Limerick are a very good side, don't get me wrong, but Clare has shown they have some very good players, very young players. They're ready for the fight, and they're excelling in nearly every position this year, and they generally look a settled team this year. Like, I don't think there's been much changes other than yesterday, of course, when it probably didn't matter against Waterford. But in the 3 matches previous, I don't think there was much changes to the teams throughout the 3 weeks. And that just shows the cohesiveness that Clare have in their team. And fair play to Brian Lohan, fair play to the players, and Clare fans must be buzzing at the moment, Aaron.
Yeah, I'd agree as well. I don't think they're going to be too far away. And yeah, I had them in third as well in my hurling predictions. I remember you saying as well, though, like, I feel like if there was a team to cause a shock, a team to cause a surprise this year, I always had a funny feeling about this Clare team, because when I watched them last year, like, they were doing the hard part a lot of the time. They were missing a lot of chances. There was a lot of wides, but you felt like if they could correct that, if they could just, work on the training ground with their accuracy a little bit more in front of goal, they won't be too far away, because they've already got probably the best hurler in the country in Tony Kelly. If they could find a little bit more from some of the other lads, and then you add Peter Duggan coming back in, Brian Lohan, very well-respected coach, and has obviously been there quite a while, and a lot of people know him at this stage. So, I always felt like they wouldn't be too far away. You did mention the league table there. We actually do have the league table here. I forgot to get it up on the screen a little bit earlier. But yeah, you can see there, Clare finishing on top with 7 points. Limerick with 7 points in there as well. Clare and Limerick marching on into the Munster Senior Hurling Championship final, and Cork obviously finishing in third. Looking ahead to that Clare and Limerick game, it's obviously a bit away, but what do you think? Could Clare end Limerick's reign as Munster champions? They've obviously won, 3 in a row now, Limerick. Looking for 4 in a row, which, would be an incredible achievement from the Limerick men. But can Clare do the unthinkable? And, I suppose it wouldn't really be the unthinkable, really, would it?
It probably wouldn't. You see, against they performed very well against Limerick the last end. Even if was always deserved to win that game in Cusack Park. But the thing about Clare, they haven't won a Munster Championship, I think, since the late 90s. So that's an incredible statistic right there. And Clare will be up for this game. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's their nearest rivals. They haven't won Munster in a very long time. They might have won an All Ireland in 2013 under Davy Fitz, but they haven't won a Munster in such a long time and haven't really been close in the last few years. And this will be a statement of intent if they can beat this team. I would not be surprised at the slightest if Clare pull off this result. But I just think Limerick, like, they're effortless, really, throughout the field. Like, you look at Kyle Hayes, the most probably dynamic player in the whole of Ireland. Like, he was wing back last year. Now he's playing in the full forward line. Aaron Gillan's performing excellent. Don't get me wrong, some of the Clare players are playing excellent so far, Tony Kelly and Shane O'Donnell. But I just think Limerick have vast knows about them. I think Clare, I would be surprised actually if Clare lose this Munster final, go to the All Ireland final and win it against Limerick. They're that good. They're a pretty good, well-oiled team. They'll definitely be up for the challenge. And Brian Lohan, he'd definitely want to beat Limerick more than any Clare person, really, because you see him as a player. He was absolutely brilliant as a full-back, as a bit of a lion, in all honesty, along with the likes of Davy Fitz and all them players and Anthony Daly. He was an absolutely outstanding player, and he will be gunning for this game. He'd want to beat Limerick. Limerick are Clare's nearest rivals. Of course, they share a college UL, so of course they are rivals in its own right, but I just think Limerick will just have enough. Like our Galans in brilliant form this year. Darragh O'Donovan, William O'Donoghue in the middle of the field. Dermot Bird's excellence. Mike Casey back in the team. I just think Limerick will have too much for this Clare team, but I wouldn't be surprised if Clare had a bigger say in this All Ireland Championship.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, to be honest, I fancy Clare to actually turn Limerick over in that Munster final, to be perfectly honest, with the form that they're on. The only issue is, like, Limerick since 2019, like, every obstacle that's been thrown at them, they've found a way to overturn it. When they come up against that great Waterford side, Cork were in flying form last year as well. You know, when Tipperary were 10 points up at half time, they managed to come back as well. So I think with Clare, it'll be interesting to see, like, when the going gets tough, how do they respond to that? Because even in that game versus Limerick, there wasn't really a lot of pressure on them necessarily, to be perfectly honest, because a lot of people knew, well, Clare weren't booked into a Munster final at that stage, but they had one foot really in that Munster final. So it's going to be interesting to see, certainly, when it gets tough, maybe when they go 5-6 points down, how they respond to that. Jeremy McDonagh says here, fancy Galway to challenge Limerick. Plenty of comments flying in there as well, so much appreciate. Make sure you smash the like button, share this out to your friends and family as well. Helps the channel grow, all the rest. So very much appreciated there. And obviously, German makes a good point, and certainly we'll get on to the Leinster Championship right now. We'll throw the league table up on the screen to remind people of how it finished. And you see there, Galway unbeaten. One of just two teams unbeaten in the one of three teams actually, alongside Clare and Limerick, to be unbeaten throughout the championship this year. And you see Kilkenny and Wexford going through there as well. Dublin missing out on score difference. Dublin actually finishing with a negative score difference of -12, which is quite an extraordinary statistic, really, for a team that won 3 games. But look, we'll start with Kilkenny and Wexford first of all, because a huge win for Wexford away to Kilkenny. Kilkenny's first championship defeat at home in their last 10 games as well, which really shows you how big of a result this was for Wexford. And I'm going to be honest, I did not see this coming after Kilkenny's result last weekend, where they steamrolled Dublin and where Wexford struggled to get past Westmeath. And Kilkenny were looking good quite early on. They got that early goal, 4 or 5 points up. But you have to commend Wexford, and defensively as well. Brilliant performance. And they get a huge victory away to their nearest rivals.
Yeah, what a superb performance from Wexford. And what I noticed as well, there was a die-hard spirit of that team, a spirit that they were never going to give up in this game, epitomised by that Damien Rake block towards the end of the game in stoppage time. When Wexford players were out on their feet, and they still managed to, preserve the victory. And fair play to Wexford, they were absolute standing and probably deserved to go through. I know they drew against Westmeath, but at the same time, they beat Kilkenny, they drew against Galway. So, judged by that, they only lost 1 game in the championship, and maybe that was a bit of a fluke, in all honesty, with the Dublin results. So, look, Wexford in the outset probably deserved to go through in the end. And as for Kilkenny, look, it was a defeat. They're in the Leinster final, no biggie, to be honest with you. But I'd be kind of worried if I was a Kilkenny fan looking at that performance. A lot of poor mistakes in that game. I know Kilkenny had his moments with that brilliant flick-up, which definitely does more replays in this calendar year. But at the same time, 1-8 from play in this game for Kilkenny. Like, that was a bit poor from them. And yes, they're in the Leinster final. It's no big issue. Like, Waterford and Tipperary will suffer more, for example, in the Munster Championship at Dublin as well. But Kilkenny, look, they have to perform better if they're going to beat Galway the next day. They won't. If they perform like that, Galway are going to give them even more of a trouncing. I think Galway are well up for the challenge. Kilkenny didn't look so on Saturday night, and they probably relied on TJ Reid a bit too much in that game, and they were living off the Mossy Keown goal for a long time as well. But Wexford deserved victory completely. Lee Shane was outstanding. Rory O'Connor, they kind of struggled to get into the game. They hit a few wides at the start of it. Went on, they started to 8 points over the bar from left, right, and centre, and they deserved to win at the end. That die-hard spirit, and they're finishing towards the end of the game as well. The free taken from Lee Chin was so yeah, Wexford absolutely deserves to go through, but for Kilkenny, a worry this performance.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, all right, there when you mention Kilkenny, and obviously, going into that game against Galway, how needed it is for them to get a victory, because they've actually lost to Galway and Wexford, but yet they've somehow found themselves into a Leinster final, which is an unusual one. And the crazy thing is with Kilkenny, they are such a strange team at times. Like they tend to produce performances. Like we've seen them at times produce big Leinster final performances when they've been under the radar. Beat Galway obviously in a Leinster final back in 2020. But I mean, in terms of Galway, I mean, speaking of them, obviously a huge win for themselves against Dublin, 27 points to 21. Disappointment, most certainly from a Dublin perspective, but from Galway, they're unbeaten now, 4 wins and a draw. They really are going under the radar, in my opinion, because like a lot of people are giving Clare a lot of hype, and that's fair enough. They're definitely up there. And I do think Galway probably, the Leinster Championship isn't as strong as the Munster Championship, but you'd have to admit that Galway really are, maybe in contention themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And throughout the season, they've had 19 different scores. That just kind of shows the amount of scores they have in the team and the amount of players that can step up. And even Joe McDonagh retired last year. People were thinking Galway are gone. But when you look at the amount of scores they have in that team and the amount of teamwork they have, they failed to win one game, and that was against Wexford. We probably deserve to win, looking back at that game. So Galway will definitely be a team to fear going down the home stretch of the Leinster Championship. The worry about them is, can they do it in the big days? Like, they didn't do it against Kilkenny when they were kind of motoring in 2020. They didn't win that Leinster Championship in the end. They didn't do it against Dublin when it mattered in 2019. They did do it in 2020 against Dublin or Waterford. The pressure was kind of off them on Saturday night against Dublin. They were already through to it. I think they were already in 3 anyway. It was just getting through to the Leinster final. There wasn't much pressure on them. So my worry for Galway is, can they do it under pressure? The proof will be in the pudding in the next few weeks against Kilkenny. That would be the acid test for them. Had very good performances throughout the championship, as I mentioned. Joseph Cooley, like he has to be up for Player of the Year so far, I think. Like, from midfield, he scored 215 for play. He's been absolutely outstanding. Cathal Mannion, one of the most underrated players in the country. Brian Concannon, Tom Monaghan coming into the team. These new players stepping up for Galway, that has to be brilliant. And Henry Shefflin, it couldn't have started off better for him, this job. But the icing on the cake, I suppose, would be beating his old mate Brian Cody in that final. That should be a very interesting decider. But as for your old County Dublin, look at the last few weeks. Like, I looked at their score, 1 goal in the Leinster Championship. I know they beat Wexford. I know they performed well in the first few games, and they were thinking, oh, Kilkenny and Galway would beat them. But at the same time, 1 goal in those games, even against Meath and Wexford. I mean, look, at this level, it's not good enough, in all honesty. Like, Donald was your main scorer. The only other score he had over 10 points was Rian McBride with 11. That just kind of shows the scoring issue that there is with Dublin at the moment. And Matty Kenny might be under a bit of pressure now. I'm here into Dublin. See the tweet from yourself that you're hoping he comes in. Well, you have to wrestle him off Cork Camogie first, I suppose. But we'll get to that bridge when we cross it. It was poor showing for Dublin on Saturday night. Poor showing in the few games. And kind of disappointing after the Wales. Expected them to kick on after that game, but they didn't. And ultimately, they're out of the championship because they didn't score enough. And that's the frank reality.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was it was most certainly a very disappointing performance from a Dublin perspective. You obviously had Ronan Hayes going off injured after 7 or 8 minutes, which was definitely a big blow. I don't think we've got the best out of him, to be honest, throughout the entirety of the championship. And attacking wise as well, like, we just haven't seen enough. Like, Fergal Whiteley was very impressive throughout the club championship, for example. Danny Sutcliffe wasn't quite at his usual best. Donald Burke's been brilliant, but we just haven't had enough other than that. And our attack just hasn't been quick enough. We've looked dead on our feet. There's been no real fluency in our play. Not only have we not been scoring goals, but we haven't been creating much chances either. We seem very happy to try and take the point from distance and rushing chances, and it just hasn't really worked out from a Dublin perspective. But look, you did mention there obviously about Davy Fitz, and certainly a lot of rumours going around and flying around at the minute in regards to Davy Fitz going to Dublin. You seen him on the Sunday game last night, almost sort of putting an advertisement out there, most certainly, about how Dublin should play, and certainly sort of putting himself in the mix. And look, he is part of Cork Camogie, obviously, at the minute. He isn't the manager. He's obviously, I believe, an assistant or a selector or something like that, from what I know. But I mean, look, I think he is meant to be a manager. You know, he's been a manager for almost every year since he retired back in the early 2000s. So, I mean, Davy Fitt's going to Dublin. I know we've had this conversation before, but I really do feel like it is going to happen. And as I said when I tweeted out, I do think this would be the best thing that's happened to the Dublin Hurlers since they won the Leinster title in 2013. Because, look, I know he's a bit of a character and maybe he offends people every now and again. And, you know, maybe he says things that he shouldn't say, and he's very emotional. And, you know, a lot of people don't like him because maybe he's trying to get, you know, money and all the rest, and all these sort of crazy accusations get leveled at him. But you can't deny that he is a born winner. Like, the man's won an All Ireland as a manager, as a player, won a Munster title with Waterford, won a Leinster title with Wexford. If he goes to Dublin, he might not win a Leinster title, but will come very close. I'm very sure of it.
And the main thing is, Aaron, he's won trophies everywhere. And that's kind of like Jose Mourinho in soccer. He's Fitzgibbon Cup, I think, was some college, I think it was UL. But he's won an All Ireland with Clare, as you mentioned, the Leinster title with Wexford, and of course that Munster title with Waterford in 2010. Like, I genuinely believe he could Leinster title with Dublin. You look at the team he inherited with Wexford a few years ago. Like, Wexford were miles off the Leinster Championship compared to likes of Kilkenny, even Dublin winning it a few years before that, and Galway, and he got them to the Leinster title. Imagine what he could do with this Dublin team, with the resources there. I know you're sick of the resources talk in Dublin at the moment, but there are resources in Dublin. The one manager in hurling that can boast out of them resources is Davy Fitz. The worry is, though, I mentioned this stat again, they've only scored one goal in the championship. Davy Fitz isn't necessarily an attacking coach. That was Dublin's problem in the Leinster Championship. He would be a good appointment, don't get me wrong, and he might win an Leinster title, and he will get damn close. But, like, where's the goals going to come from if he's going to play sweepers all the time? That's my issue with Dublin. Is he going to get goals out of Donald Burke, for example? No. Is he, like, he has to bring in more players like Shawty Curry, for example, scored a big total in the Dublin county final. He should be brought into the panel, in my opinion, if he's already, or even into the starting 15. Like, you know, there are players in Dublin. Davy Fitz will get the most out of them. My trouble is, will they get enough goals? Even will they get even more than one goal? Maybe, like, for Dublin to succeed, they need to score at Galway, Kilkenny's level. They need 5, 6, 7 goals in a group phase in Leinster. That's where Dublin need to be at. Will Davy Fitz get them up that level after that start this year? I'm not so sure. I don't know what you think about that, Aaron. Goal scoring would probably be the issue, but organisation-wise, he's probably the best manager, and winning trophies, he probably is the best manager. Goal scoring.
Yeah, I mean, you do make a fair point, all right, there, obviously, in regards to the one goal scored this year. And as we've seen with Davy Fitz, he is, I suppose, predominantly a defensive coach. I mean, not fully, but I mean, I do think he obviously plays a lot of sweepers in there. So that's usually sort of his approach. But I think at the same time, like, you know, his teams did score goals for Wexford. He did get goals out of Clare as well. And I think he'd go into Dublin and he'd be like, right, there's something to work with here. There's defensive structures already put in place. We probably have one of the best fullbacks in the country in Owen O'Donnell, which is definitely something to work with as well. It's just getting that attacking side of things, and whether he brings in certain coaches to help him or something to that regard. I definitely think it's a fixable issue, but you know, whether we do sort of shut out teams, I'm not sure. It's going to be very difficult, and certainly a lot of time to work with it, most definitely. But I'll certainly be curious to hear any Dublin fans in the comments live or down below what you think about Davy Fitz going to Dublin, and even any Wexford fans or Waterford fans, Clare fans, what you think about the possibility of Davy going to Dublin. Because you did mention the resources thing as well, and you know, Dublin do have a lot of resources, but it's about using those resources as well to the best of your ability. And I think he would be a man who would be able to get the best out of Dublin. Another county that is has the opposite of Dublin, really, in limited resources when it comes to hurling. But I mean, a huge result for Westmeath away to Laois, winning 5-24 to 118. I mean, this is the type of scoreline you'd see maybe when Galway play Laois, or, you know, maybe when, you know, Wexford play Laois, or something to that regards. And to put it in perspective, like, Dublin beat Laois by 1 point. Westmeath have gone out here and beaten Laois by what is that, 18 points? I mean, that is an extraordinary result, really.
superb result from. If it improving as the championship has gone on, like when you look at back at the Leinster Championship, they only performed really poorly in one game against Galway, and then again Galway are arguably all Ireland contenders. Like they played Dublin, they played against Kilkenny, they drew against Wexford. What a superb performance that was last week, and they backed it up. My worry for Westmeath going into this game was they knew what they had to do over the last few years. They beat Antrim unexpectedly a few years ago. They went into a relegation battle against Westmeath, performing poorly, and then beat them last year. Look, I was just fearful there for Westmeath that they wouldn't do it. They did fair play to them, and even they've more scores other than Killian Doyle. Like Noel Mitchell has scored 3 goals in the championship. Noel O'Brien. Like these players should get more recognition than they do. What a performance from Westmeath, and for Joe Fortune, what a superb coach he is, and what an appointment he is for Westmeath. And he's consolidated their place in the Leinster Championship. And as for Laois, it's not been a good year, has it? And I'd say a lot of the panel now, but there is bizarre chance now that Laois stay in the All Ireland Championship despite getting hammerings week in, week out. I know Laois have performed well. They got to an All Ireland quarterfinal, fair play in 2019, but this year they've been poor. Just they need to be relegated. We'll get on to it later with the Joe McDonagh Cup, I'm sure. But at the same time, like, even if, regardless of what Kerry do in that Joe McDonagh Cup final, these should be relegated. End of. Like, they've lost every game heavily. I know they lost Dublin by a point, but maybe that was a small flash in the pan. Like, at the other games, they performed very poorly. They were beaten to all throat in those games. But to stay in the championship, I mean, it makes no sense to me. There, it's unfair to the likes of Carlow and Offaly, who sunk like a stone when they got relegated. They deserve to get relegated those years. They deserve to get relegated this year, and chance now they won't get relegated. I mean, structures in hurling with the Joe McDonagh Cup and the name of the GAA needs to be sorted out fast, and these should be relegated as soon as possible. But for Westmeath, what a season for them. To get Division 1 hurling, let's not forget, and to stay up at the Liam McCarthy. What a season. Joe Fortune's done an outstanding job, but Laois, in my opinion, they should be relegated.
Yeah, I agree. I think as well. Like, I mean, maybe the fair thing would be the bottom team in Munster should play the bottom team in Leinster. The loser of that gets relegated, and then if Kerry win, let's say they go into the Munster Championship, 6 teams. Leinster goes down to 5. Like Munster was 5 this year, Leinster was 6, so there's no reason why they can't do a flip next year. And I know people would say, "Oh, Tipperary playing Laois, well, Tipperary will win that anyways." But at least have the game, so at least you have a relegation playoff. I think we'd all know that Tipperary would get themselves a victory there and they'd be able to defend that off. But I feel like that would be the fair way because, yeah, it doesn't really make sense that, you know, like if Antrim win, then Laois get relegated. But if Kerry win, then Laois don't get relegated. And it's a very odd one, very strange one, all right, and doesn't really make much sense indeed. GATV says Westmeath are near enough Wexford and Dublin. And look, by their performances this year, they certainly are improving, and you certainly would hope that they will crack on and get a big, get some big victories and sort of build momentum from there. You mentioned Kerry, and obviously in the Joe McDonagh Cup. And actually, what we'll do is we'll get the league table actually up on the screen first of all before we run through some of the Joe McDonagh Cup games. So it was Antrim who finished top. Obviously, despite that defeat, they were already in a Joe McDonagh Cup final. Anyways, they knew that before the game. But bizarrely enough, Kerry have now found themselves in yet another Joe McDonagh Cup final. Actually, their third Joe McDonagh Cup final in a row. They needed Offaly to get beat by Carlow. They needed to beat Antrim as well. And incredibly enough, they have done exactly that with, as you mentioned there, finishing with 29 points. Antrim with 221. A famous result for Kerry in Corrigan Park.
Yeah, what a result for Kerry. And I'm absolutely delighted for them. They've worked hard every year. And to get 3 Joe McDonagh Cup finals in a row, I know they've lost in the last 2 years, but that's a fair achievement for this Kerry team. And for a county that isn't really up to hurling, other than Buff Egan, of course, who's the king himself. But Kerry aren't really a hurling county. And to do it 3 years in a row, get to that Joe McDonagh Cup, I don't care about the Cork-Kerry rivalry in football. I'm up for Kerry in hurling. I want Kerry to win this final. Like, they've been through the mill so many years now, and to win the Joe McDonagh Cup would be absolutely outstanding. commend Antrim for what they've done over the last few years. But for a few years, I kind of want Kerry to win it. Number one, to prove Kerry hurling. They'll have something else to concentrate on, of course. Number two, to kind of show the ridiculousness in the hurling championship and kind of highlight how ridiculous it is to keep Laois in the champion. Like, yeah, Kerry deserve to go up if they win it, and for working so hard year in, year out, and what a performance from them. Shane Conway, I don't think he even scored against Antrim, or he might not even have played, and he's stand-up players, and to see him being outshone by the likes of Padraig Boyle, Mark Connor, Fiona McKessie at wing back. I mean, Kerry are more of a, they're not one-dimensional anymore, depending on Shane Conway. They're all over the field now. They're a very good side. And that's credit to Steve Blumpy as well. What a superb job he's done. And Antrim knew they were in the final already, easy enough for them. But for Kerry, what a thing for them. But I hope they go on and win it now. For the good of Kerry hurling, like, imagine Kerry now playing the Liam McCarthy Cup, but scrap that. Imagine if they play Cork now, preliminary quarter-final. That's a match I'll probably go to. That should be very interesting. Kerry and Cork at hurling, who would have seen that coming?
Yeah, that would be a crazy one, all right. That would definitely be one of them sort of storylines, really, that you see that you don't really see too often. And, considering obviously the Kerry footballers have given the Cork footballers their fair few batterings down the years, I'm sure maybe as a Cork man yourself, you'd be able to see your own side dish out a big result on Kerry. But to be fair to Kerry, look, give them their credit. They might be able to put up a performance there. They've had a very good year by their own standards, obviously getting back to another Joe McDonagh Cup final. And as you said, even as a Dublin man myself, and the fact that there is a huge Dublin and Kerry rivalry a lot of the time, it would certainly be great to see Kerry get up into or get into the Munster Senior Hurling Championship next season. Obviously, the other game was Offaly 17, Carlow 22 points. We'll just touch on this game briefly, but bit of a setback for Offaly. I mean, a lot of people had them as the team to progress with Antrim in the Joe McDonagh Cup. Wasn't meant to be from their point of view, but I suppose in the end, look, a big result for Carlow, who have started to put together a nice run of results in the last few games. Will definitely give them a bit of confidence going into 2023.
Absolutely, yeah. I watched Carlow last week. I was covering that game against Down last week, and I thought they were absolutely superb. Marty Kavanagh, Chris Nolan, some very good players in that team. But Tom Mullally seems to be jetting a few players there in Carlow. For Offaly, very disappointing. But at the same time, let's not forget they were promoted for the Christie Ring only last year. Maybe it was a year or two. They beat Kerry in that brilliant game last week, which definitely deserved more recognition than it got in the end. But fair play to Offaly for even finishing in a close to promotion challenge. Carlow, most people thought they'd rot and go down to even the Christie Ring Cup, but they recovered. They did very well, and what a win it was for them. But for Offaly, very, very disappointing. But they'll go again next year, I'm sure. Like, if Laois go down, I'll actually be confident that Offaly could beat them. I think Laois are on a downward, Offaly are on an upward trajectory. So, still positive signs of Offaly hurling, but for Carlow as well, very good opportunity to go to Liam McCarthy next year, something to build on for both counties.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was also down 228, Meath 219. So a great victory there from a down perspective. Before we finish up on the hurling, we'll just touch on the under-20 final briefly there. Kilkenny 19 points, Limerick 18 points. Now, I didn't see the game myself, to be honest, just seeing a bit of brief highlights on the Sunday game. But I think the big point really here is that Kilkenny, they've been starved of underage success for a long time. I think this is their first under-20 success in 10, 12 years or something to that level. So I mean, for the Kilkenny under-20 hurlers to get a victory here over Limerick and know that there is players coming through, the likes of Billy Drennan, for example, I mean, positives to take from a Kilkenny point of view. Obviously a bit of controversy with the Hawkeye situation, but nonetheless Kilkenny will be happy with the victory.
Yeah, superb from Kilkenny, and even previewing the game before it even happened. Like, I was surprised to see that Kilkenny haven't won an under-20 championship before the game since 2008, and that was under-21 at the time. In case I get bombarded in the comments about that, but fair play to Kilkenny for finally winning it. What a job Derek Ling has done, Jer. But as you said, the controversy was the points from Paddy Langton in the first half. I think scorekeeper of the game, I was even unsure, was that point really given? I didn't really see it as a point. I was watching it on the TV and I couldn't see, gee, not a point whatsoever. But at the same time, it maybe was a game that deserved to go to extra time. It was an evenly matched game throughout, but when you look at the scores from play, Kilkenny had more Limerick, and you kind of would have said, yeah, okay, Kilkenny deserved to win the game, but Limerick had some very good players coming through, and a very bad side for the likes of Cork, for Tipperary, for Dublin, for all the counties that want to challenge Limerick. When you look at Shane O'Brien, Aidan O'Connor, Adam English coming through, like imagine if Cathal O'Neill had stuck with that team as well. Imagine if Limerick would have with him. Like that's another ridiculous rule. It was mentioned before the summer. Like Kieran Joyce couldn't play for Cork, Cathal couldn't play for Limerick. I think one of the Stalums couldn't play for Tipperary. Look, it was an over ridiculous rule, to be in all honesty, and should have been rectified there. But at the same time, fair play to Kilkenny won, but I wonder if Cathal O'Neill was in that Limerick team, would they have won the game? And that Hawkeye decision, of course, Hawkeye should be in for every game. And there was this situation in the minor championship, I think that was just under 10 years ago, and it involved Limerick again, but it was against Limerick at that point, where a point clearly went over the bar and Hawkeye wasn't used in Croke Park. Why can't Hawkeye be used? And ladies football was another example for Cork Dublin a few years ago. I think Carter Rowe's point clearly went over and it went wide. Why are we just using it for hurling and football? Why can't we use it for underage games and LGFA camogie? Like the GAA should be inclusive in that stage, but it should be, in all honesty, when you see Hawkeye only use the big games, why can't it be used for these games? Like for Limerick to win the title, I'm sure them players wouldn't get that under 20 opportunity again.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's a disgrace, really, in many ways, that they don't have Hawkeye available in these under 20 games. Like, I mean, these games should be in Croke Park first of all. Like under 20 finals should be in Croke Park, and the fact that they're not it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever, in my opinion, considering they're national events, they're huge occasions, they go into the history books, all the rest. And yeah, like what you said, the fact that they didn't have Hawkeye available for this game is just very, very strange, in my opinion. GATV says one of Kilkenny's points weren't over and Limerick were scammed out of it. And look, what I would say is there was still a lot of time in the second half for Kilkenny or for Limerick to come back. And sometimes you get these decisions, sometimes you don't. Freak occurrences, sometimes that can happen. I don't always like looking at refereeing decisions as a sort of a turning point, but you can understand it from a Limerick point of view and a reason as to why they were a little bit or very frustrated, obviously, after that defeat. And as you said, if Cathal O'Neill was available, I think he would have most certainly played a big part for Limerick. We'll move on to some of the football results from the weekend. The two Tailteann Cup games that happened, obviously big wins for Wexford or big wins for Offaly and Wicklow, I should say. But I suppose first of all, we'll have a look at the qualifier draw. And as you can see there, you've got Mayo versus Monaghan, Clare versus Meath, Cork versus Louth, and Armagh versus Tyrone. I mean, what are your thoughts on that draw there? I mean, I suppose as a Cork man, look, Louth are a very good side. They had a very good season in Division 3. And look, I don't think that'll be as straightforward as people expect. But, even looking at Mayo, Monaghan, Armagh, Tyrone, Clare, Meath, I mean, there's some tasty draws in there.
It's a very good draw, yeah. I was absolutely delighted listening to that draw this morning. It was the best possible draw we would have got in Louth, away from home, or at home, I should I say. I know Mickey Hart's a good manager. Sam Roy, you had him on your podcast. He's a very good footballer. But in all honesty, if Cork want to develop further, and if this project under John Cleary is going to work, and we have to perform after the Kerry game, we have to beat teams like Louth, no disrespect. And Louth coming down to Cork, that'll be a very tough assignment for them. But yeah, Cork should probably win that game. And yeah, I'm quite delighted with that draw. Maybe I kind of would have been happy with Tyrone coming down to Cork. Serious Kavanagh said some pretty nasty things about the Cork footballers in the last few weeks. Would have wanted to teach Tyrone a lesson coming down. But no, it wasn't to be. We got Louth in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, so we'll have to deal with them, I suppose. But looking at Mayo, Monaghan and Armagh Tyrone, they're the two stories of the round. You'd have to expect Mayo to beat Monaghan. Monaghan, no disrespect, but at the same time, Mayo are all Ireland contenders for a reason. They're going to beat Monaghan at home. Armagh so early on to make a prediction in that, but I'd actually back Armagh in the United Grounds. That'd be a very tough game for Tyrone. It's going to be a very interesting draw. Don't forget Clare against Meath. I'd actually fancy Clare in that game. Like, I know Meath have made strides with their minor win and their ladies football win and all that, but their performance against Dublin was a bit of a disgrace in the Leinster semi-final, and Clare haven't been pretty bad over the last few weeks, so, and Clare at home as well. I think Clare might win that game against Meath, so yeah, but at the same time, very good draw for Cork, and there's realisation that we only have to beat Louth and one more provincial finalists, and we're in Croke Park. Like, you wouldn't have thought that at the end of the Division 2 campaign. You would have thought Cork would have been a disgrace coming out of that, but I'm delighted with that draw, in all honesty, and could be happier.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned there, like, it is kind of incredible, really. Like, you know, sometimes you can get these sort of draws that can work in your favour. And as you said, like, you look at some of the sides that we think are going to get beaten in provincial finals. Now, maybe there might be shocks, but you'd look at maybe a Limerick or a Kildare, I think would be too much of a stretch. But, you know, you do have a good record against Limerick. Look, Limerick have had a very good season themselves, and I'd probably nearly fancy them to beat Cork, to be perfectly honest. But I think that's a game that you could definitely win. And then all of a sudden you're in an All Ireland quarter-final, and you know, that's a success then all of a sudden. You know, it's a bit like when you reach the Super 8s, you know, when you got relegated to Division 3, suddenly the pressure is off. But, you know, Mayo going up against Monaghan, that's a tasty one as well. Like, Mayo, in my opinion, have been on a poor run of form. I think they've won one of their last 5 games. It's certainly not been going well for them. I think they could have done with maybe an easier draw, in my opinion, just because of the fact that they, you know, need to start building a bit of momentum and start winning games. But what would be your thoughts on Mayo Monaghan as well? I mean, that's an interesting one.
It's a very interesting draw, definitely. As I said, I expect Mayo to win that game. They're at home. It's going to be a tough tie for Monaghan there, but I'm hearing Mayo have a few injuries. I don't know, is that true? They still have Killian O'Connor. They still have Ryan O'Donoghue, who apparently is still fit. But Tommy Conroy, obviously, if he was there, he'd make a huge difference for that Mayo team. But I think Mayo should win that game. Like, Monaghan didn't really have it against Derry. That was the most disappointing aspect for them. Like, Jack McCarron, Conor McManus. Like, for Monaghan to win this game in Castlebar, you have to feel Monaghan have to put 100% in, maybe 110%, because, you know, it'll take a lot out of them to beat this Mayo team. Like, Mayo are still one of the best teams in the country, in my opinion. It's going to be a very interesting tie there. But I'd expect Mayo to win this game. If Mayo don't win this game at home against Monaghan, I mean, look, it's going to be, you have to wonder, are Mayo ever going to win All Ireland if they can't beat a team like Monaghan in the first round of the qualifiers at home? But I'd probably expect Mayo to win that game despite missing, because Monaghan need to be up there in every position in that game. They need to have the games of their lives to beat Mayo. I don't think Monaghan have it in them to have the games of their lives against this Mayo team. So, winners inch side of the list, Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I would back Mayo at this moment in time as well, but I do think it's going to be a close game, and maybe a lot closer than people expect. Our man Tyrone as well. I mean, that's a saucy one altogether. I mean, that's certainly one to get excited about. We'll have a look at the Tailteann Cup games, or Tailteann Cup, as I should say. Wexford 2-13, Offaly 3-11, an absolute humdinger of a game, really. Late goals, late drama, a bit of everything, really. But Offaly get their revenge on Wexford from that Leinster Championship defeat.
Good victory for Offaly. A lot of people were expecting Offaly to surely get the job done in this game, but geez, Wexford gave them a right good game here. And considering they got a bit of a pummeling off the up.
Oh, have we lost you there? Oh, we still have you.
This Leinster Championship, I think that's a brilliant performance for Wexford to come back into that game against a seasoned enough Offaly team at the what I wonder, why was this game in Enniscorthy? I really don't know. I don't know why this game was in Enniscorthy, in all honesty. Like, but look, it was in Enniscorthy in the end. it was a bit of a strange decision there by the Wexford County Board, but like Wexford Park, as far as I know, wasn't used for each year, was it, or was it at all? But it was a bit of a strange decision. It was held to the Scotty there, but look, Offaly deserved to win. They got through in the end. It will be a tough game now against Wicklow in the next round, despite being in Tullamore. So, yeah, fair play to Offaly. They'll take this competition, I'd say, seriously. John Mahan, Thomas O'Shea, the backroom team, of course. I was hearing off the ball live space on Twitter, an Offaly man, I'm not sure, but he was saying that Offaly fans, there's no appetite for this competition. Was that entirely true? But we'll have to see now in the next few weeks. Will they take that Wexford game seriously next week? But if they do, I think Offaly would be real favourites for this Tailteann Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think they'll be too far away. GATV says as well it wasn't a humdinger. Offaly were really poor, sloppy, and off the ball for 50 minutes. I didn't get a chance to go back and watch the full game just as of yet, but I did see the highlights. Looked like an entertaining game, in my opinion. But yeah, as you said there, you would have to fancy Offaly to go and get the job done. Wicklow 316, Waterford 110. Big results for Wicklow. I mean, an expected result. It was a result certainly that I didn't think it would be by this margin. I thought Waterford would be a little bit more competitive. But look, for Wicklow, I mean, they do have a good crop of players coming through, and I don't think they'll fear Offaly. And I actually think that game might be a lot closer than people expect.
I think it'll be a lot closer than people expect, in all honesty. Like Kevin Quinn, for example, scored 5 goals in the championship so far, to the Leinster Championship. That's a pretty good tally from him. Owen Darcy was outstanding. Jackson, the goalkeeper. And I have to say this as well. It's great to see the likes of Mark Jackson get the credit he deserves on the Sunday game last night. It was so refreshing, really, for Colm O'Rourke, the calibre of him as an analyst, to talk about Mark Jackson the way he did. And that's a positive for this Tailteann Cup, in my opinion. These players like Mark Jackson, like Niall Matlamy, like Ben Brosnan, kind of get the recognition they deserve. And that's the whole point of this competition. And fair play to the RT analysts there for that, at least. I think there should be games shown, but at the same time, brilliant victory for Wicklow. But for Waterford, according to Efi Fitzgerald, anyway, maybe this is a biased opinion from himself there, but apparently Waterford had their best performance in that game. I don't know, is that entirely true? But they were close in so many games. I think they only got hammered by Wicklow and Cavan this year. So, look, Waterford have to go to next year. They need a win now next year under Efi. He seems to be doing a good job there, which is kind of a surprise. I thought he was a bit out of his depth with the Cartleys footballers as the years went on. But he seems to be getting a tune out of the Waterford players. But what they need is a win, and they didn't get it this year. Maybe next year for these Waterford players. But for Wicklow, I think they'll be a team to reckon with in this Tailteann Cup, and maybe they could replicate their Tommy Murphy form from 2008.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously when they won that tournament as well, like people forget that was almost the springboard for Mick O'Dora's men when they obviously a year later went on a bit of a run through the qualifiers and put in some big performances as well. Who's your pick for the Tailteann Cup out of interest? I mean, for me, it's Cavan. I mean, maybe that's a bit of an obvious prediction, but who would you be backing, obviously, to come through the Tailteann Cup and win that tournament?
I've said this for a few weeks now. I have a slight feeling Sligo will win it. I don't know what you might be an onus in the dress there off for Sligo, obviously to Red of that. Might be some motivation there. Let's do this for Redo Murphy. Let's win the Tailteann Cup for him. And Sligo have definitely showed this year that the minors, the under-20s, there is some very good vibes around Sligo football at the moment. I know they're in Division 4, but they have a very good throughout their team. They're a very good team. Tony McAtee's done well as a manager there. I genuinely believe that Sligo will win the Tailteann Cup. I know that might be a shock to you and to your subscribers here, but I just think Sligo might have enough to win this competition. I wouldn't be surprised if Tipperary or Cavan win it. I think Offaly are up there. I think down best, so they probably won't win it. I feel that Sligo will win this competition. I don't know what you think yourself.
Yeah, I mean, look, they finished Division 4. They finished the National Football League as one of the best attacks in the country. Very good young players in there, as we very well know. Whether they go and win it, I'm not sure. I just don't know if they have quite enough. The side of the draw that they're on as well is quite difficult, and potentially coming up against either a Cavan or Fermanagh, I think will be difficult for them. But look, if there's a team that could cause a shock, if there's a team that could cause a surprise, maybe Sligo wouldn't be too far away. And obviously on the other side of the draw, like you have Westmeath in there, for example, who should very well be the favourites there. And I think they won't be a million miles away, in my opinion, with players like John Heslin. But look, I don't think Sligo will be a million miles away. But you think if they come up against Cavan, they'll have their number?
Like, it's a tough one. Like, I think Cavan and Sligo will come through the northern section, and then the semi section, if I'm wrong, no, but I think that's going to be separate. That's going to be separated then. Like, a southern side will play a northern side or something like that. If that happens, I actually go on Cavan to reach the Tailteann Cup final. Like, I might be wrong in that now, but correct me if I'm wrong in the comments or something like that. But if that happens, I think it'll be Sligo Cavan in the final. I know John McMahon watching this and screaming at the top, something like that, but I just think Sligo will be honest there to win it. I'm backing Sligo. Of course, I have a Sligo well. I just think Sligo in this competition are kind of up for Sligo as well in this competition. So maybe a bit of a biased pick considering I have their jersey. So yeah, I got to go Sligo. I got to go Sligo to win this competition to beat Cavan in the final.
Yeah, look, I mean, I understand it from your point of view, and I definitely don't think Sligo will be a million miles away. I'm sure John McMahon might be away on his holidays by then, to be honest. But we'll obviously have to wait and see if Cavan get there, another day out in Croke Park, which will be interesting. But yeah, look, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up here. Cheers anyone who tuned in to the live stream, and if you could hit the like button, subscribe as well if you haven't already, and if you could share this out to your friends and family, be much appreciated. Helps the channel grow and all the rest. And yeah, very much appreciate you coming on, Matthew. Make sure to check out your own podcast as well. I know you have a weekly show over there over on Spotify, and if you check out the GAA Statsman too, that's the Instagram handle over there as well. You'll be able to see statistics and all the rest. GAA news over on Instagram and Facebook as well. So cheers, Matthew, for coming on. Much appreciated.
Thanks very much, Aaron. Thanks for letting me come on your channel again.